I'm about to leave the Austin KOA. I've been here for a couple of nights so I could visit my daughter. I actually spent 2 nights at a Corps of Engineers campground a little bit north of here, and then 2 nights here. The reason I did that is because this KOA is a little pricey. It's $80 a night. So, and the only reason I stayed here is it's easy for my daughter to get to. Like, she can come pick me up from here. But yeah, since I got down here earlier, a few days earlier, that's why I stayed at the Corps of Engineers, because that one was only $30 a night. So like 2 nights there is less than 1 night here. So, but the plus side is they do have nice showers here. So I got a couple of good showers. And I'm actually now going to head towards, or start working my way to Galveston. I'm going to stay at a Harvest Host tonight. That's a little winery I stayed at last year. It's a cute little place. It's funny, last year when I stayed there, it was actually really hot out. So it's going to be kind of nice for it to not be hot. But yeah, they had some nice wines. So hopefully I can pick up a couple of bottles. But on the way, I'm going to first stop at H-E-B to get I have to get some more laundry soap, and then I'm going to go do some laundry. And then start working my way to the Harvest House, which is only a couple hours away, so it's not very far. And I'm taking all back roads. And then I'll get to leave from there to go to Galveston tomorrow. But anyway, so on to H-E-B. Okay, so I finished with H-E-B. For the uninitiated who are not familiar with H-E-B, I call it the Disney World of grocery stores. The place is just so amazing, and they're all over South Texas. I mean, like, literally, when my daughter and I were roaming around yesterday, I think there was like 3 probably within like a 10 to 15 mile radius. It's raining out. But for whatever reason in North Texas, we didn't get any H-E-Bs until last year. So we have 2 in our area. And of course they're always crowded. But I mean, it's just such an amazing store. I mean, I guess the only thing I've found like outside of Texas would probably be Meijer. I think that's how you say it, Meijer. Meijer. Which I've seen those in the Midwest, and they're similar. But H-E-B has a little bit different vibe. I guess it's the Texas vibe. But anyway, it's really easy to get carried away in there. I went in for laundry soap, and then I started thinking about, like, well, what do I want to cook? And then I started thinking, well, maybe I'll make some macaroni and beef. And then I was like, but I don't know what all the ingredients, I was like off the top of my head trying to think of the ingredients. And as I'm walking along, I saw some marinated meat for street tacos, and then marinated chicken that you can put in the air fryer or bake. So I was like, oh, that sounds good. So I got that. So I've got stuff to make street tacos, and then teriyaki chicken, and I got it's frozen sushi rice, the sticky rice. So I don't have to use a rice cooker or anything. But yeah, so I ended up kind of wandering. This is what happens to me when I go to H-E-B. I wander aimlessly and probably buy more things than I need. But anyway, so my freezer is now packed because I had to get all the fixings for street tacos, which is cilantro, serrano peppers, onion. I did get some little corn tortillas, although I don't usually, and I did get flour tortillas too. So I thought I'd try both because I kind of don't do the corn tortillas, but anyway. But yeah, so here, let me show you the H-E-B. Yeah, they have an H-E-B wellness primary care center over there, which I've never seen that before. And then there's of course they have gas pumps, which I'm going to go get some gas here. And then head to the laundromat. But yeah, it's a dangerous place. And I get so excited when I come down here and there's just all these H-E-Bs everywhere. But anyway, I'm gonna go get gas now. So I'm just kind of holding my phone up right now, so sorry if it's kind of weird, but yeah, I'm just here at the laundromat. Decided to make a cup of coffee. Again, it's what makes the advantage of having a lithium system. I just turn on the inverter, plug in my coffee maker, and off I go. But yeah, it's a cute little laundromat. Yeah, I've kind of got a mess back here. I decided to wash the sheets as well. I figure, well, if I'm going to do laundry, might as well do everything. And so yeah, when I get to my destination tonight, I'm going to have a little bit of housekeeping. I'm in Galveston now. Got here day before yesterday. Just kind of hanging out at the campground. It's been pretty windy. Yesterday was kind of overcast, and it rained a little bit last night. Today the sun is out, and the day I got here the sun was out too, and I actually got some video of a nice sunset. I haven't really ventured into the city of Galveston. Just been hanging out at the state park, but I might do that. I check out tomorrow, so I might do that like on my way out. I think I'm going to try to take the ferry too, to go back across, and then I start heading back home. I'm going to go to a Harvest Host Sunday night, and then I'll head home. I'm going to answer a couple of questions that I got in the comments. One was kind of how I found some of the campgrounds, particularly like the Corps of Engineers campgrounds. And another question was just about driving what it's like driving a van, and why I travel solo. So I'll talk about that, and then also probably talk a little bit about what I anticipate coming up for the next year, because I'm going to be doing a whole lot more traveling, and I'll get into that. But right now, just going to cook some breakfast, and then I'll check back in. I don't know if I ever really went into detail about how I ended up traveling solo, how I ended up traveling in a van. I think I've talked about it a little bit. I kind of started with, and I've discovered a lot of people have kind of started this way. I used to love to look at tiny houses and kind of daydream about them, but it wasn't something I was like really, like would probably really pursue. I mean, it was just something that I was like, oh, it'd be so nice because it's so much simpler, right, than a larger house and all of that. But they have, there's like, I wouldn't say big issues, but there are certain issues with them. One of them is the reason that they're tiny houses on wheels is because most places have ordinances where, buildings have to be so many square feet. So, and they tend to fall below that. So by putting them on wheels, it kind of comes under the RV category, although they're not really, when you look at a tiny house construction, I mean, not that they're not built well. I mean, they are, obviously depending on who builds it, but it's just not something that you want to go bouncing down the road all the time. So it really kind of comes down to finding a place to put it. And that's the hard part. And then I don't really know what the resale is on them. I'm assuming it's probably not great. So anyway, not go too long on that. So it was always just kind of a daydream. And I always kind of also had a thing for RVs. Always kind of wanted to travel in one. Never had. I mean, growing up, I remember going camping one time in a tent, and it rained all weekend, and that's like the last time I remember taking a camping trip like that. After that, my parents would like rent a cabin for the week. But I've always kind of had this fascination with RVs. And then I remembered, in fact, I just watched it the other night. I saw this movie, and I mentioned it. It was the movie I mentioned when I hosted the What's Up Wednesday, and that is Lost in America. And it came out in 1985. It's an Albert Brooks movie, and I think that like put that in the back of my head. Like, I thought it was the coolest thing when they were talking about, like, well, and their thing, it was, dropping out and traveling in an RV. And I thought, man, that would be so cool. And nobody, this is pre-internet. So if people were doing it, you really, unless you knew people, you wouldn't know about it. Because there was no YouTube, there was no social media or anything like that. So, I always thought, like, that's something that would be so cool to do, but it seems like, society, it's kind of like you're in this mold of like, well, have the job, own the house, all that stuff. And so, now, I think a lot of that's changed, and so many people are doing full-timing in RVs or traveling a big portion of the year in an RV. They may have a home base, but they're only there for a couple of months, and so that's kind of where when I saw that other people were doing it, and I was like, wow, this really could be done. People can do this. And of course, Scott's channel was a big catalyst. When I decided on a Class B, it was really because of Scott. And if by some chance you're watching this and you have not seen Scott's channel, which I would be very surprised, but in case you haven't, it's Go Small, Live Large, Scott Watson. I had been watching other YouTube videos, people traveling like in a fifth wheel or travel trailers or whatever. And I just, was trying to picture like because I didn't know anything about RVs and, all the little things you do, how they work and all that. And so, I don't know, the idea of a larger RV, a fifth wheel or a travel trailer just kind of like overwhelmed me. Like, I was like, oh, there's so many things to think about, and, I don't know how this works or that works. And then I came across Scott, and when he talked about how, like in his van, he says he has 4 living areas because of the floor plan of the Travato G, with a little dinette up front. That's your front room, living area. You have your kitchen, your galley. In the back, he has the bed on one side and the bathroom on the other. So those are like the different spaces, right? You're not all just in one space. Where I think mine is probably a little more studio apartment style, because sleeping area, living area, galley, and then the bathroom's over there. So I don't know that I would say I have 3 living areas. But anyway, so watching him, and when he talked about how his partner wasn't into traveling in an RV, would prefer to fly in, stay at a hotel, that kind of thing. I was like, well, that's kind of where I'm at. My husband's that way. He would rather, he doesn't like driving long distances. And so he would rather fly in, stay at a hotel, have everything taken care of, and that kind of thing. So Scott was kind of my inspiration for traveling solo. And my husband was totally on board with it. So that was good. And so that's how I ended up traveling solo, in a Class B. And again, the Class B, going back to when Scott was talking about it, he made a point of, you can pretty much park anywhere. With the lithium system, you can just get up and go and, do whatever, and you have full shore power, so you're not worried about having to be plugged in. And I was like, okay, that just everything clicked. Like that made sense to me, because I don't have a need for slides and, all that stuff that the big RVs have. And I was like, the ability to be able to park somewhere in a parking space, because I can pretty much park in most parking spaces. I mean, I'm 22 feet, so it does it, but it's like a big long pickup truck, really. So I just try to pull in as far as I can, or sometimes I'll back in. But I can pretty much park in most spaces, which is, again, it's like driving a very large car. And that was kind of leading to my question, to one of the questions I got was like, how is it to drive a Class B? And I could tell you now, I have not driven the ProMaster, but I'm sure it's probably pretty easy to drive. It's a front-wheel drive vehicle. It's a foot shorter. I believe it's 21 feet. Is it 20 or 21 feet? And again, that kind of depends too, because there are, You can get build outs that are shorter, depending on which van they use. You know, they may use the shorter profile, or they might use the full length vans. Like the Travato is the longest ProMaster. The Beyond is on the longest, the biggest Transit. And the Galleria is on the biggest Mercedes Sprinter, just to kind of give you a point of reference. Now the Sprinter is 24 feet, so you may have a little bit more trouble fitting into a space just because of those extra 2 feet. But yeah, doesn't mean it can't be done. And as far as driving them, I can tell you from driving the Ford handles great. It is like driving a big car, and I've discovered I actually have a better view out the front than I do in our passenger car at home. I think the biggest thing to get used to is just you are sitting higher. It is longer, so you have to just remember that. But it's not like, again, if you were driving a Class A, you know, there's a very specific way you make your turns. Like, you know, you aim the front end where you want the back end to go so that you don't clip something when you're making a turn. But the vans are super easy to drive. I mean, they're not, again, it's like driving, if you've driven well, we used to have a Yukon XL, which is like a Suburban, that was 18 feet. So, and I got used to it. I felt like I was driving a bus, but I got used to that. And ironically, it's funny because we had that when our daughter was little, and it was me and the other moms with their kids. You know, we would go places, and it's, you know, it was perfect because you could get all the kids in their car seats and the strollers and all that stuff in there. And then I downsized eventually to a Yukon, to a GMC Acadia. And then I traded my Acadia for a Nissan Leaf. And then the Nissan Leaf is what I sold to put towards this van. So I went from a Nissan Leaf to the vans. That's kind of a big change there. But yeah, it's really easy to drive. Like I said, I'm pretty sure the ProMaster is easy to drive. Now the difference again is that the ProMaster is front wheel drive. The Transit is all wheel drive. It's either rear wheel drive or all wheel drive. Now the Coachmans now are all wheel drive. If you look for a pre-owned, it may be rear wheel drive. Or if you look at a different builder, you know, whether it's a custom builder or a different manufacturer, you know, it may be rear wheel drive if they don't purchase the all wheel drive. Mercedes, I know they switched from 4-wheel drive to all wheel drive, and I don't know much about them as far as like how that goes. You know, if there's a difference because in how it handles. I know like the 4-wheel drive is really popular for the adventure vans because it sits higher, you know, it's lifted, and it's perfect for off-road. I don't know how the all-wheel drive is going to fit into that, but they did change that. So, and as far as like if you're thinking about a Class B, some of the things to think about would be if you're I guess the biggest thing I would say is when you're looking at one of the RV manufacturers, and I really only know about Winnebago and Coachman because most people I know have Winnebagos or Coachman. And both of those manufacturers, you know, they're well known, they're well made. You know, there's obviously differences in how they're built out. You know, Coachman uses the different kind of cabinetry than what you might see in the Winnebago. I think the Winnebago is more like European style. But they're good manufacturers. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. That's not to say that you won't have issues. I mean, it's just inherent. It's just the nature of the beast. There could be issues. If you go with a new one, the best thing to do is find a good dealer that's going to work with you. I know a lot of people talk about Sunshine State. I purchased pre-owned, so I can't speak to that, but everybody has really good things to say about Sunshine State. National Indoor RV, I think, is another one. So you want to be careful with the dealers. There's one big dealer, I don't know if I should say the name because I don't want to get in trouble, but I could say 100% of the time, or at least 99.9% of the time, the reviews I've seen are not good. Like, people don't have a positive sales experience, and not necessarily a very positive service experience either. And it's a big chain. It's a good place to go. Like, you can shop online. It's a good place to go for sewer hoses, replacement caps to something, RV accessories. But as far as buying an RV, I wouldn't go there. And it's, if you Google online RV dealers, you'll probably figure out who I'm talking about. It's a world. Let's put it that way. Anyway, so going back to what I was talking about. So yeah, and if you're going to go pre-owned, obviously there's two ways to go. It's private seller or through a dealer that's selling a pre-owned vehicle. Now, the advantage to a pre-owned vehicle would be obviously a better price. Hopefully all the little kinks are worked out, because you usually in those first few thousand miles you have the shakedown, which is where you find out, okay, maybe something's not hooked up right, or something, a component's not working properly. So ideally all that would have been worked out. And if you go with a private seller, definitely, without a doubt, get an RV inspection done. In my case, I had to have it done because at the time I did a loan, and that was required for the loan. But and this vehicle was only a few months old. I lucked into that. But yeah, pre-owned is a good option, from, like I said, from a cost perspective, because Class Bs are not cheap. They're and the reason people say, well, I can get a Class A for the same amount of money and it's, so much bigger and all that. Well, one thing to consider with the reason the Class Bs are so expensive, it doesn't have to do with the size. It has to do with, they're having to go and buy these vans, and the vans are like $40,000-$50,000, and it depends. Some manufacturers might get the base model. Coachman gets the mid-level model. So, you get the CarPlay, whatever the chassis features are that come in the mid-level you get. Because I have seen some, and I can always tell, well, they're buying the base because it doesn't have, it has like the little stereo as opposed to the screen. Yeah, so they're having to buy these chassis, and they're, figure 40-50 grand right on the top, like before they've even started building anything out. So then you've got the build out, which you figure, I don't know what that costs them. Let's just say 35,000 maybe in labor, components, things like that. So now you're almost up to 100,000, and then you add things like a lithium system. Lithium systems, I think it's generally about 25,000. Adds about 25,000 to the unit, and and you're probably wondering, well, what do I need a lithium system for? Like, what does that do? And the biggest thing I can tell you, it's getting a little warm in here. I'm going to turn the fan on. The biggest thing about the lithium system is, again, as I've said, I've never had an RV before. So meaning I've never had an RV with a generator. So I can't, I can only tell you what I know. So if I'm wrong, I apologize. But what I know, like, if you have, okay, let me try to explain this better and not get too long-winded. So you have 12 volt outlets and you have 110 outlets. 110, obviously is like for your household appliances. You want to plug in a toaster, you want to plug in your hair dryer. The 110, in order to supply power to it, you've either got to run your generator or be plugged in at an RV site with a 30 amp hookup, 30 amp. With the lithium system, you don't have a generator, And so you have this bank of batteries that has generally, like mine is 600 amp hours. Winnebago goes, how do they do theirs? They do theirs a little bit differently, but it's roughly about the same amount of they don't call it amp hours. They go by, I think, watts. I think that's how they classify. Anyway, what I'm getting at is that we've roughly got about the same size batteries. They have a Volta system. I have a lithionic system, but it's a lithium system. And so what that lithium system does is you have an inverter which changes the power from DC to AC, which is your household. So when you turn on the inverter, it's drawing power from the batteries and it's sending it, converting into AC, and so now you have power at your 110 outlets. And it's completely silent. What the beauty of lithium is that you have that option for shore power anywhere you go. So if you want to camp out on BLM land, which is Bureau of Land Management, and there's no place to plug in, again, you've got shore power. Now, obviously those batteries drain, so there's two ways that they get charged. One is if you are plugged into a 30 amp outlet, and the other way is when you're driving, it's charging those batteries back up. So that's where lithium really is a nice feature. Now, again, it does add costs. So one of the options is you get a vehicle that doesn't have lithium, and then you can add it later. And it is a little bit less expensive to do it that way. I'm not as familiar with, I know people that have added the ability to charge the battery while driving. I don't know how all those technical, I couldn't hook it up. I could tell you it does it, but I can't hook it up. But so that's always an option to think about too. Now, if you're thinking about a van, you want to think about, what types of things do you want to do? Like, where do you want to travel to? How do you want to travel? Do you really would just rather hang out at a campground and plug in? Lithium system may not be worth it to you. If I want to go out on BLM land, I want to camp at the beach, I want to, pull off to a rest stop. I don't want to depend on campgrounds. Well, then a lithium system may be something to really consider. And again, it's whether or not you get a vehicle with it or if you have it installed later. But it would definitely benefit you because you're not worrying, because there are places you can't run your generator. Now, I keep seeing, on Sunshine State RVs, they do a lot of, obviously they're always showing what new vans have come in. And so they've talked about that there is a new Onan generator that's supposed to be really quiet because you're not supposed to run them at national parks. And I saw a recent video, I think he made a comment that this one's quiet enough that you're allowed to run it in national parks. I don't know, I would verify that. But a lot of people have talked about, it is significantly quieter. And so people that use generators are like, wow, this is so much better. So those are all things to look at. And again, it's how are you going to use it and where you're going to use it is going to kind of dictate really what features are going to end up being the most important to you. And that's kind of what I've talked about before, with the bathrooms and, the reason I like this floor plan, because I was originally looking at the Travato G, but I didn't like the fact that they changed that front area and took out that puzzle bed. And so, again, thanks to Scott, when he did a tour of the Coachmans at Tampa a couple years ago, that was my aha moment of that's the van that I really like. And I like that the fact that my galley is very similar to the Travato galley. We have the same fridge. It's about the same. I think the counter's probably about the same length. Lithium system was an option, just like on the Travato. Main difference is, instead of having the bathroom back here, my bathroom's up here. But this, for being a side bathroom, it's one of the biggest ones I've seen in this type of floor plan. And that was something that, and I've talked about it before, I won't go into all of that, but so it kind of checked the boxes. And obviously the biggest thing that I, had to resolve. What I liked was that the Travato did have that dedicated bed, that Murphy bed that folds up. And so you can leave it made up, but you can push it up, right? You don't have to make the bed every day. You just pull it down. In fact, I think Tiffany, where is Tiffany? Hers, I think she just leaves it down. I keep seeing the sun hit my hair. And so what I learned in traveling almost 2 years with this one, the bed situation was the one thing that, I really struggled with. Even though I'm traveling solo, I needed to have that option if somebody comes with me, because, as you've seen, my daughters come with me, and I'm still working on trying to get my husband to come with me. But, so I ended up making this modification that's just really worked out well for me. So that's the other thing to think about. Nothing is ever going to be like 100% perfect. So you have to find the floor plan that is going to work best for you. And you may still have to make modifications on. Maybe you won't. I mean, there's some people, in fact, there's people in our Beyond group, they've done 0 modifications. Or their modification might be just putting up a hook for a hat or something. It really just depends. It's, and there's custom builds. I know there's a builder, there's several builders that completely, like there's Advanced RV, which I think they're probably pretty pricey. They only build on sprinters, I think. And then there's Drifter Vans. I follow them a lot. They build some really pretty vans, and they have a couple, like I think they have 3 floor plans, so you can go and say, yeah, I like this floor plan, and then make some minor modifications, or you can go completely like, we're going to do this from scratch. Here's my, layout that I'm interested in or whatever. So they're pretty flexible there. Could not tell you what the cost is. I think with Drifter, you can actually, like, say you bought a cargo van. I think you can go to them, bring them your van, and they'll build it out, or they'll help you source a van. And they build, I believe they build on all three, Mercedes, Ford, and Dodge, or Ram. And then there's another builder out of Nevada that I followed. I kind of discovered them when I was looking at this van, and they were kind of like my backup if this didn't work out, called Be My Van. And they have a couple of floor plans, and they don't build, I think really the only thing you customize with them is like maybe some of the colors, the wood colors and things like that. But the floor plans themselves, I think, pretty much stay the same. But they're pretty nice. And it's a similar floor plan to the Travato G. The difference is they use cassette toilets, and also Drifter uses cassette toilets. And we've had the whole toilet discussion before, so that's, again, that is something to think about when it comes down to, it's like looking at your situation, whether you have, certain health issues, or, what your hobbies are. If you're an outdoors person, you go skiing, you go hiking and things like that, you probably want a van that has really good garage space, which is where you see like the bed is a little bit higher and then all the storage is underneath. So you have to kind of factor all those things in when you're looking for a van. Where am I taking it? What things do I like to do? And there's going to be generally there's going to be the thing that you have to have, the thing that's nice to have, and the thing that you could go either way on. And like for me, have to have was definitely the bathroom. It's funny, when I first looked at the Travato, I went to a dealer to go look at it, and I just like hung out in the bathroom. I was like, oh, this is so, and then I was like, okay, you got to take it down a notch. Yes, you want a comfortable bathroom, but it like, you're not going to be staying in there. Like that's not where you're hanging out, right? It just needs to be comfortable when you're using it. But I knew I wanted a good gallon, and I wanted a larger fridge. And so like that was kind of my must have. And then And lithium. I knew I wanted lithium. But yeah, so it's kind of factoring in all those things. And I would recommend, if you haven't driven a van before, maybe just going to a Ford dealer, going to a Ram dealer. You know, take one for a test drive. Just a cargo van. Take it for a test drive and see how you like it. I actually, before we got the van, and I had never driven a van, other than the only thing I had, the largest thing, like I said, was the SUV. We were moving my parents into assisted living, and so we rented a van to move some of their stuff. And I went to the U-Haul app, and they had a Ford Transit, and I was like, oh yeah, I want to rent the Ford Transit. Well, their app was squirrely, and there was, like, you had to go through several screens, and there was one screen, I guess I didn't enter something correctly, or I don't know, but it doesn't tell you that, and it makes you think that you've already reserved it. And I got there, and the app even let me unlock the van, but then it said I didn't actually rent it. It was weird. So I ended up with a GMC van, cargo van. I remember I was so disappointed because I wanted to drive the Ford, but this GMC cargo van, which, you know, they don't even make a tall van that anybody builds out, but I drove it, and I was like, well, this is kind of fun, and this is, you know, and I was like, in my mind, you know, behind me is just a shell, but I was imagining, you know, like, okay, behind me is my little kitchen and the bathroom and the bed and whatnot, and I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. So yeah, test driving getting an opportunity to just drive a van to get the sense of how it feels, I think would help a lot. And just kind of, you know, familiarize yourself with, you know, how does it, you know, when you're looking out the window, how does it look? How does it look in the rearview mirror, you know, when you're looking back and all that. But yeah, those are all things to think about. But it is really easy to drive, and it's easy to manage. I've kind of surprised myself with how much I'm able to, I don't know, do myself. And you do kind of start to learn, and obviously you know what your limitations are. I know where my level of handiness is, which is not very high, but you know, and you just kind of make it your own. Now the other thing, talking about, you know, thinking about places you want to go, I mostly relied on KOAs and Harvest Host, and I'm trying to branch out from that. And actually, when I brought the van home, because I brought it home from California, and I Harvest hosted all the way home. I didn't even stay at a campground, and I was comfortable with that until I stayed at a KOA, and I was like, well, this is easy. You just plug in, don't worry about anything. And then I got a little dependent on it. Part of the reason was because I was working, and so I always felt like I needed to be somewhere that I felt like was a connected place, so to speak. I've since, I don't like to use the word retired, but yeah, officially I've quit my job, retired, so to speak. Just, like I said, I just don't like the word retired. So now that's going to completely change how I travel. One of the things is I'm looking for, you know, KOAs. Generally, the KOAs I would stay at, I would never stay at one that was, you know, a ridiculous amount of money. I would usually stay at, like, you know, $40, $50 a night kind of thing. But state park campgrounds and Army Corps of Engineer campgrounds are a lot cheaper. The big difference is, you know, at a KOA, you generally have full hookups. I mean, you know, some spaces are just electric and water, but most of them are full hookups, right? Plus you have a shower facility, which I would take advantage of that. But aside from that, you know, a state park or a national park. Well, actually, can you camp on national parks, or is it just BLM? I don't know. Anyway, let's go back. State parks and Army Corps of Engineer campgrounds. You know, the bases generally are further apart from each other, and much more scenic. But you just have electric and water, which that's not a big deal, and they're much cheaper. where I'm staying right now is $30 a site. I'm on the Galveston Island State Park campground on the beach side. Now, obviously, these spaces are a little bit closer together because it's not about sitting in the middle of the woods. I mean, you're right near the beach. I mean, we can walk right down to the beach. But like the Corps of Engineers that I usually go to, like up in Oklahoma, and I stayed at one here when I came down to Austin, and the Corps of Engineers campground was actually really pretty. So what I was going to tell you was, and somebody on our Beyond group mentioned this book, but it's the Corps of Engineers camping book. And so it lists every campground for each state that they have one. And, and it does give you a map. Like there's Illinois. And it tells you where those campgrounds are. And then it has a list of them. Let's see. There's Oklahoma in here. South Dakota. So even South Dakota. So it says there's 942 camping areas in 35 states. So it's pretty helpful. That's how I found the one that was near Austin. Because I mean, trying to look on Google for them sometimes, it's easier just to have a listing of it. And then the other thing is I have a national parks membership, and then I have a Texas State Park membership. And I've thought about maybe, depending on, because I'll be in Florida next year for a couple of months, I might get their membership. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. And also Harvest Host. I use that quite a bit. And then I use the app All Stays, like if I want to find, like if there's a Cracker Barrel or a Bass Pro. So I'm going to be doing more of that kind of camping. And less, depending on the gateways, and moving around more and seeing things, which is going to be nice, because like last year when I went to Florida, because I had to work, I spent 2.5 weeks. Was it 2.5 or was it 3 weeks? I don't remember now, but at the Gainesville KOA, and it wasn't that expensive there. It wasn't $80 a night, but I got restless because, but I stay there because I'm like, well, I gotta be working and whatnot. So now that I'm not having to work, my trip to Florida this year, I have a few campgrounds planned, and they're more as it relates to right before I go to an event, because I'm going to, I'm going to go to the Tampa RV show. I've got a couple other events, and so I'm camping or staying at a campground right before those events, to make sure I have like full, so I can dump my tanks, fill my water tank, all that kind of stuff. But I've got like a lot of gaps where I'm like, all right, I'm just going to try to figure out where to stay. And it's going to be interesting because Florida is pretty crowded, in the winter. So yeah, that's going to be a big change. And then, but I have like things that I'm going to pretty much all year next year. So it's going to be pretty good. But I would definitely recommend, looking at this. Definitely state park campgrounds. And the other thing I would add, memberships. So I'm in Escapers, and they have campgrounds, and I have not used them yet. And the other one, somebody asked me about that oval that's in my window. It's my membership plaque with my member number, but it's Family Motor Coach Association, and they do have a bunch of groups in all the different states. I haven't done anything with them other than that. I haven't done any of the groups or anything. But the reason I joined that one was because they do have as part of the membership, if you're out on the road and you get sick and you can't get you and your vehicle home, they have a service to help you with that. And that was the main reason I joined it, because I was like, well, that's, you just don't know, right? Something could happen. So I thought, well, that would be good to have. So, and I think it's only like $50 a year. So that's not, that to me, that's worth it. But I definitely would recommend Harvest Host. And Harvest Host is added, and I haven't used them yet, but it's Camper's Card, which is for finding campgrounds. Camp Scanner, and I signed up for that because I guess, yeah, I signed up for that and got a discount, I guess, because I have Harvest Hose. And Camp Scanner, we're going to test that out in Florida, because what it's supposed to do is if you're looking for like a state park or something and it's booked, obviously Florida, I've already looked and they're all booked up. You can have it do a scan and it can find openings, maybe last minute openings where you can get in. It might be a night or two and you might have to change spots, but so I'm going to try that. And then, of course, like I said, All Stays is good for, if you want to find out, well, is that Cracker, what have people said about that Cracker Barrel, or can I stay at that Bass Pro? So yeah, those are all things to have handy. And the only other thing I would say, if you're looking for a van, is also look at the vehicle manufacturer and their overall reputation. The biggest thing I can say is join the forums, the Facebook groups for the vans that you're interested in. Like our Beyond page is super active, and everybody, I would say, 99% of the people love their Beyond. Very few people have had serious issues with it. And so that's why you want to join those forums, because you'll learn, like, okay, what have people said, what have they said about the ProMaster? Like, what are the things to consider? What are the things to consider with the Transit? What are the things that people are saying about, having a Coachman or having a Winnebago? Because there's a Travato group also. And so you'll learn maybe the little things that you've got to look out for, but you'll also learn things like modifications. Like, that's how I knew about the shower curtain extender. Was so many people were doing that. That was like the first thing we did. And you'll get ideas for places to travel, but you'll really get a good idea of, okay, this particular vehicle has problems, or or when I say vehicle manufacturer, RV manufacturer may have, quality issues. I won't say anything. Like I said, I only know Winnebago and Coachman, and they're both very good. Neither one is flawless. Like I said, stuff happens. It's just the nature of it. But those two brands are, I would feel good about either brand, I guess is what I'm saying. And obviously there's the more like Storytellers, Embassy RV. Those are also very good. Now, Storyteller is a very specific, that's an adventure van. I think they're beautiful, well done, but it's an adventure van. So again, that goes back to, how do you want to use it? I mean, if you're going to go off on BLM land, that's probably a great vehicle for that. Embassy RV is another one that's out of, I guess he's in India. I don't know why I had it in my head that they were in Michigan, but they are in Elkhart. And Embassy RV is a very unique RV. And if you watch Scott, you he's talked to Terry, who's the owner of Embassy, and he has a lot of Embassy people. That's part of his, part of Go Small Live Large community. And the Embassies are interesting because there's no wood, no black tank. In other words, they don't, like, all the framing for the components is metal. So you're not going to get issues with mildew and things like that. So they have a very unique approach to the way they do their vans. And I mean, I think they're really cool. So that's another good one to look at. And they have a big, just like the Beyond group, they have a big owners group, Facebook group that's very, very active. So those are like some of the ones I would say are worth looking at. Embassy, Storyteller, Winnebago, Coachman, and then obviously some of the smaller builders. Now, if you decided you wanted to do a custom build, the only thing I would say is make sure it's RVIA certified. I call it Rivia, but it's RVIA, the RV Industry Association, I think is what it stands for. Because if they have that certification, first of all, they're building to whatever those standards are.
but it's also going to be easier for you to get insurance. It may be difficult, if you just have, Bob down the street build out a van for you. You may have trouble getting insurance. That's not to say people do it and they obviously are doing something with insurance, but if you want to get RV insurance, it has to have RVIA, I believe. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it does. But anyway, so I know I've kind of been long-winded. I hope I answered some of those questions. Sometimes I just kind of ramble, so hopefully I didn't do too much of that. But yeah, I'm just gonna probably go take a walk down the beach and kind of get my steps in for the day. It's perfectly clear, like there's not a cloud in the sky. So yeah, it's really nice out. Probably in the upper 60s, mid to upper 60s, I think. Yeah, but windy. I can hear the wind, and I can kind of feel it. Well, you can see it. And the back doors aren't open. It's just coming from the cross breeze. But anyway, yeah. So I hope that was helpful. And yeah, next year I hope to have a lot more videos out. I'm planning on going a lot of different places. So completely changing up my travel to doing more travel, less campground reliant, or less KOA reliant, shall we say, because there's not much BLM land on the East Coast, or actually there's no BLM land on the East Coast. So once I head more west, I'll probably definitely be doing more of that. But anyway, so I will end it here because I've just been gabbing. So anyway, yeah, I hope that was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next one.